Good evening. My theme is Beyond Natural Hazards. My key topics are, my key terms are environment and development, in short, eco-development. I want to show how a topic develops, and I acknowledge that scientific storylines can hardly be separated from personal histories. I will quickly present my personal scientific background, then discuss some previous research projects, and building up on that, present 6 theses on disaster governance. I will draw some conclusions. I was born into a hosiery family producing socks and stockings. The company was founded in 1813. This was the year when Napoleon was defeated in Leipzig. After school, high school in Washington, D.C. and Heidelberg, Germany, I studied economics and philosophy. Economics to suit my family, philosophy to suit my soul. Very early on, I took up the field of environment and development, in short, eco-development. The term eco-development was coined by Maurice Strong, then Executive Director of the United Nations. Eco-development was used until roughly 1987, and then replaced with sustainable development following the terminology of the Brundtland Report. Eco-development meant, similar to sustainable development, that economic development was to be substituted by environmental concern, and it also had a social aspect. Now, my first project in Tanzania in the 1970s was eco-development, on eco-development in Tanzania, an empirical contribution to needs, self-sufficiency, and environmentally sound farming. Key findings, a bit surprising in those days, no need to bring organic farming to Africa. We could learn from them. And here you can see how a social scientist understands fieldwork. We learned that there is local knowledge, there's sufficient local knowledge, and there is no need for sophisticated ecological terminology. The farmers told us, beans feed maize. We called it nitrogen fixation. During those days, Tanzania had a very charismatic leader and president, Nyerere. He was called by his people, by the residents of Tanzania, he was called Mwalimu, the teacher, which actually is an Arabic word. And he taught the people, he taught the farmers self-esteem. He told them farming is a profession. They didn't know that before. They thought everybody was a farmer. And he taught them, be proud of what you do. Next project, China in the early 1980s. I was tempted to move from small brother to big brother. And the project was on environmental policy in China and technological development. This was an empirical case study in different areas: agriculture, industry, and settlement planning. Again, eco-development was the basic term, but we took it to different areas. Key findings: China was in the transition from the era of Mao Zedong to the age of modernization. And we learned that throughout post-independence history, post-World War II history, environmental concerns and eco-development had played a role. By the way, the Chinese called it eco-development, economic, ecological development. And this happened independent of political changes of all sorts until the country moved from a yin period to a yang period, as the philosopher Bernhard Glaeser called it. South India in the late 1980s. The project was on rural housing, appropriate technology on rural housing, and it combined empirical social science, some architecture, and civil engineering. This happened in Chennai, in those days called Madras. And we cooperated with the Department of Civil Engineering at the IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology. Key findings: crash tests helped develop new building materials. This was an exercise in appropriate technology, which was to be environmentally sound and took care of social concerns. Again, a part of eco-development. In cooperation with the villagers and with local NGOs, we developed and offered technologies developed by the civil engineers, and we offered building designs that could be used locally and would fit local needs, basically family needs, but also specific professional needs. One quite interesting design I would like to present. This is what I call a mental map. This mental map was produced in the village of Kovalam, which is the neighboring village to the hotel Fisherman's Cove, where we had dinner last night. So in Kovalam, I interviewed a fisher named Joseph, and Joseph drew off the top of his head, drew this mental map, trying to explain to me the village structure. And the village structure contained caste differences, so you could see which castes live where and how this was connected. The system was connected to different types of fishery, basically day fishing and night fishing. Day fishing starting roughly 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, night fishing shortly after midnight at 3 a.m. In those days, our son was born, and he also enjoyed Chennai in particular. He loved the idli, the local South Indian rice cakes. Kovalam actually was my first encounter with coastal problems. And I became aware of this fact when I moved to Sweden and became the professor of human ecology at Gothenburg University. And a little later, I was the program director of Sukusoma, a national program on sustainable coastal zone management. And Sukusoma was an empirical project, interdisciplinary research program, and it involved ecology, fisheries, economics, law, and human ecologists as the coordinators. And not to forget the National Board of Fisheries, Fiskeriverket. Key findings: we identified some general trends in the development of fisheries, dividing coastal small-scale fisheries and industrial large-scale fisheries, and we found out that both were more or less replaced with aquaculture and mariculture. New was, in those days, the notion of participatory management and co-management, which evolved at that time. Returning from Sweden, Germany was ripe for ICZM or ICM projects, and some colleagues and I launched two national projects, one for the North Sea and one for the Baltic. Both, by the way, are Loicz affiliated projects. The North Sea project deals with offshore wind farming, and the aim is to supply 21 million households with electricity by the year 2030. We expect regional employment opportunity. and we propose a polycultural approach to combine wind farm and mariculture. And we use a mix of research tools, among other scenario analysis and the ecosystem service approach. The Baltic project is quite different. It focuses on the cooperation of Poland and Germany, but not a national cooperation, but a subnational regional cooperation. And it included some Agenda 21 participatory processes.